Hello there, my name is Robin and I'm so glad you found this video. I really appreciate your interest in philosophy and I have the firm belief that it's a very valuable task to acquire critical thinking and creative thinking, so definitely keep up with that. I'm not too sure if this is gonna have the same effect as a written article, but anyways, if you want to head over to my website at gracefulglide.com, you can also find my philosophy written down with some additional pictures. But if you want the audio form, feel free to simply listen to this video. Okay, here we go. After reading a bunch of philosophy, anthropology, psychology, mangology, okay, I think I just made that up. I don't really think that term exists, but anyways, you get the gist, okay? I've acquired or listened to a lot of general worldviews, and I want to note in which motives I see deep wisdom that has stood the test of time. Personally, I really enjoy reading about the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, while also sprinkling in some theories of Ernest Becker, Sigmund Freud, Immanuel Kant and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. These individuals proposed fundamental problems humanity faces during their upbringing that eventually drag through their whole lives. Furthermore, I think we can tackle these problems most efficiently by utilizing the tools and practices Stoic philosophers like Plato, Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius manifested. I find it insane to think about the wisdom that these people, 2,500 years ago, wrote down in some books or papers. Same with Leonardo da Vinci. That was more like 500 years ago, but still, it's so admirable to think about, and that we can have basically free access to these writings. Like also Pythagoras of Samoa, you really know him for like these basic math equations, but he laid the foundations for string theory. Like he was so curious with everything he did, and I think this is like a perfect skill or characteristic you can acquire as a human being, like being infinitely curious about everything, asking questions. It's so valuable. Well, let's get on with the video. I don't necessarily think humans are of evil nature, but rather that we are fundamentally flawed in our thinking. While Thomas Hobbes and John Locke argued that humans act egotistically with the goal to amass as much power and resources as possible as soon as they gain a conscious understanding of themselves, Rousseau, on the other hand, pointed out that we become evil once we fall into the trap of thinking we intrinsically need these possessions. Only then it creates inequality, mistrust, and is ultimately the cause of war. Since there is no immediate benefit lending a helping hand to a stranger, people were more inclined to simply rob them of their possessions. What they did not account for, though, was the future consequences that will inevitably arise. I recently finished Ernest Becker's Escape from Evil, and I can highly recommend reading it, not because of the sheer wisdom that is in it, but because it simply makes you think about all kinds of interesting topics. And in the book, and also his previous works, Ernest Becker analyzed Sigmund Freud, Otto Rank, Carl Jung, and others. And there was one motive that came up again and again: the Causa Sui project. He, and interestingly also Sartre, claimed that people create, assign and pursue immortality projects in order to feel connected to something that transcends their own finitude. In other words, these people create meaning in the individual's life that can resonate long after physical death. Participation in such projects creates a sense of purpose and meaning in an otherwise indifferent world. Therefore, as far as we can discern, the third purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. Whoa, okay, that sounds pretty dark and nihilistic, but we'll continue here. Freud argued that we are susceptible to these kind of ideals because once we discover the difficulties of having a lasting impact in this world, we simply look for leaders or groups to follow in order to make the whole process easier. We like being hypnotized, so we don't have to think for ourselves anymore. Man is destined, as William James stated, to see this earth as a theater for heroism, and his life as a vehicle for heroic deeds aimed precisely at overcoming evil. Every person wants to make a difference in the life of humanity with his life, to contribute in some way to its safeguarding and permanence. To be a true hero is to triumph over disease, hardship and death, to promote life, to make it less vulnerable in some way. Man knows that his life has had a vital human purpose if he has been able to bring real benefit to the life of humanity. And so people have always honored their heroes, especially in religion, medicine, science, diplomacy and war. This approach is strengthened by the fact that we feel the highest amount of ecstasy when we beat death. Culture has formed to deny death, to make us forget the finitude of our existence. When we are confronted with it, it's the most thrilling feeling to overcome the danger of dying. Man causes evil heroically, wanting to triumph over it, because man is a fearful animal, an animal that does not want to admit that it is insignificant, that it cannot maintain itself and its group forever, that no one is vulnerable no matter how much blood is shed by others to prove it. For man, the maximum excitement consists in the confrontation with death and the skillful overcoming of it, watching others being thrown to him while he survives as if spellbound.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Everybody calm down!
You can see this especially in Roman arena fights where gladiators slaughtered each other while the crowd cheered for their favorite warrior. When Germany slowly began to realize its defeat, they implemented the Notlösung and started executing basically everyone that went against their system or beliefs, even if it meant torturing, betraying and killing their own people. If there's no one to rule over, they simply find a new scapegoat. By the way, the works of Nietzsche never intended to discriminate or base value on ethnicities. He simply stated that depending on social status you'd have different opinions, moral compasses and ideals, as well as an urge to overcome your own weakness through self-improvement. The Nazi regime simply interpreted parts of his writing that way and looked for possibilities to justify their actions. The writer Elie Wiesel, who survived a Nazi concentration camp, summed it up in a wistful remark in a television interview: "Man is not human." The most general statement we can make is that at least every human being appropriates the other in some way in order to preserve themselves. One could say that in this sense there's a natural built-in evil in social life, because every interaction is a mutual appropriation. We have seen a direct example of this in the relationship between the leader and the group. Gurus feed off their disciples, while the disciples absorb them. Social life sometimes seems like a science fiction horror story where everyone is devouring each other like human spiders. In the past, we have seen how this worked in the dialogue between the masses and those in power. But we have also seen how human energy and fear created evil at the simplest levels of social organization. Sometimes, the will to do evil was simpler and more direct. It could be a matter of sheer physical appetite. Some tribes loved the taste of human flesh and would consume captured men, women, and children with pleasure and delight. Sometimes men went to war out of personal frustration in the tribe, to relieve sexual jealousy and grief, or simply out of boredom. Yes, actual human beings fought in war out of boredom. Can you imagine? The life on primitive plains could be monotonous, and warfare was often the main source of new experiences, travel, and real stimulation. As weird and unimaginable as that sounds. Indeed, at primitive levels, it is almost transparent that warfare was a game to appropriate others and intertwine one's life with them. We can see this pretty clearly among the Plains Indians. where warfare was often really a kind of athletic competition between tribes. But organismic instincts are sadistic by nature, and primitive man often did evil to a captured enemy because he wanted to gloat and be proud. He tortured to validate himself, to increase his own sense of importance by humiliating others. So we see that even without spiritual motives, without other worldly ambition of any kind, man as an organism does evil by enjoying his animal sense of power. This is also what Hobbes saw, that sheer energy causes evil. The Marxists have said, with Rousseau as well, that human nature is a blank slate, neutral, even good. Evil exists because of the social institutions that foster it, because of the social classes and hatred, envy, competition, humiliation and scapegoating that come from them. Change society and man's natural goodness will flourish. Immanuel Kant, arguably one of the smartest men to ever live, also believed that humans are fundamentally evil. They constantly strive for transcendence and in the process do harmful things to others, without really being aware of the impact of their actions. According to him, morality and rationality triumph over instinct, but because of blindness towards each other, bad results come forth. We have to make use of our intelligence and try to evaluate our actions more carefully. He believed that freedom means living under a state that positively embodies and teaches rationality and morality, so the state is an embodiment of best qualities of the people. I can agree with that statement, because the state should only intervene and support when it comes to health issues, justify punishment, safety and education. The state's leaders should be philosophers and have a profound understanding of human nature. Sartre was an existentialist who viewed humans as confused animals trying to define themselves in an infinitely complex world. Pretty similar to Camus, he made fun of the absurdity of societal norms, laws, and ideals we follow. This waiter, who completely changes his appearance and behavior, starting at 9 AM, lays off every human trait and his freedom in order to serve food to rich clientele. What the actual fuck? I think about this as well, like these tiny roles society gives us that we dig into really deep and sometimes take parts of our personality, and they're so mundane in some sense and neglectable, and we like work hours and hours on end without really seeing a sense in it just because we think we are forced into it. It's like totally absurd to me, I don't know. And to be Sartrean, which is like following his philosophy, is to be aware of existence as it is, when it is freed from all the prejudices and stabilizing assumptions that our daily routines impose on us. Anything is, frighteningly, possible, because nothing has a predetermined, God-given meaning or purpose. Man thinks everything out for himself, and he is free to throw off the shackles at any time. We are in bad faith when we tell ourselves that things must go a certain way, and close our eyes to other opinions. We are free, for example, to dismantle capitalism, because the one factor that most prevents people from experiencing themselves is money. I believe capitalism has opened the doors to countless innovations, better healthcare, and in general a wealthier society. But at the same time, everything has gotten tremendously random. You have to be a gambler to invest money, and it's basically the only way to free yourself from working dead-end jobs, other than starting a business. But who does that in this ever more competitive economy?
It sounds like a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yes, thank you. You will get rich quick. We all will.
We are bound to work in order to survive, and even marry out of financial reasons. How insane is that? Marxist theories will undoubtedly play a role in the revision of our capitalist society in the future, because something has to change. We are at that point, I think that everyone can agree. I'm taking a pretty wild guess here and argue that the way we economized for the past, centuries won't probably exist much longer. we will definitely see some sort of change, as Ray Dalio also argued, with a new world order, and we can only guess how it's gonna look. As I mentioned, we are basically gamblers nowadays, so yeah, there goes that. I think we sort of have a wrong picture of Karl Marx. He wasn't an economist, he was a philosopher. Marxism seemed to theoretically allow people to explore their freedom by letting go of the materialistic greed that workers were pushed into. Instead of capitalism, a new system would be established in which all people would be treated equally and factories and companies would be owned by everyone. You wouldn't have to bear monetary consequences when you wanted to read a book or go fishing in the morning, for example, instead of accounting a balance sheet for a firm with 50,000 employees. You would find actual purpose in the work you do again. And trust me, I'm fully aware that there are so many factors that speak against it, and with any other system that's going to be implemented, there will be flaws, because it is human-made and human thinking is flawed. So there will always be some sort of lever you have to pull in order to make it better, and we have to figure it out as a species in an economy that works, or kinda works, in a world that isn't going to end within the next 50 years because of climate change. So yeah, I think we can get there by listening and communicating in an efficient way. John Stuart Mill was an influential British philosopher and economist. As a liberal classical economist, Mill was a champion of individual rights, progressive social policies, and utilitarianism, which is basically advocating actions that produce the greatest good for the greatest number. According to him, there are 4 pillars of free opinion that have to be used in a functioning society. First, that opinions must not be silenced because they might be true and because their silence implies infallibility. Second, that the suppressed opinion might contain a partial truth which, together with the prevailing opinion, might form a whole new truth. Third, that an opinion, even if accepted as a whole truth, withers and dies when people stop expressing dissenting opinions about it. And fourth, that without discussion, the meaning of truth is lost or transformed into mere confession that few people really internalize. Mill argues that even the beliefs that people hold most dear must remain open to criticism from others because there can always be a better truth. While conversating, it's always crucial to be aware that humans are infinitely complex in behavior and thoughts. We can never clearly tell where one is coming from or why they behave a certain way. So go into every interaction with an open mind and notice the wonders that will occur. Become hyper-aware of your surroundings and you will find it easier to grasp intentions and assimilations. We have to listen with our ears, our eyes, our hearts, and really try to listen instead listening for the sake of answering. Discussion and criticism are good for everyone. Something that the Stoics committed for as well. It is now proven that highly developed and educated civilizations of the past, wiped out by colonists or natural disasters or war, had mind-altering experiences through the consumption of psychedelics. Geniuses like Aristotle, Socrates, and others met regularly to enjoy lively discussions and wine mixed with, well, certain herbs. One can also explore this thesis in ancient Egypt in the form of water lily, which triggered fascinating experiences in the mind. Ancient Egypt's Tree of Life was a representation of the series of events that brought everything into being, and its fruit contained DMT. What a coincidence. Call me crazy, but I believe that we should be open to the possibility that our perception of reality is one among many, and that we should experience life-changing states of consciousness if we have the capacity to do so. I strongly believe that these experiences will affect the way we see ourselves in the world, and lead to humanity becoming much more decent overall. Plato said that kings should be philosophers, and his way of thinking can also be applied to our politicians. They would definitely act differently after such experiences, rather than waging war based on power, ideals that make no sense, ethical differences that have never made sense, or land ownership. In case you want to learn more about this topic, I can highly recommend Michael Pollan, Brian Murarescu, sorry for butchering your name man, and Graham Hancock. Graham has a Netflix series as well as Michael, so definitely look that up. And now for this last part, back to the Stoics, because I really admire their view of the world. Rather than imagining an ideal society, the Stoic tries to deal with the world as it is, and not how they think it should be, while pursuing self-improvement through 4 cardinal virtues: justice, treating others with fairness even when they have done wrong; practical wisdom, the ability to navigate complex situations in a logical, informed and calm manner; courage, not just in extraordinary circumstances but facing daily challenges with clarity and integrity; and finally temperance, the exercise of self-restraint and moderation in all aspects of life. We all have to try to find joy in the sorrow, because sorrow is inevitable. Say yes to it all. Your mind is the strongest tool you have. It commands everything you do and think. That's why you have to train your mind and your thoughts and emotions by following the basic principles of Stoicism. The best way to do this is by building habits around these principles. Make the most out of life, because it's a miracle we are born. Eat healthy, be mindful, active, spontaneous, curious, decent, and form deep connections with the people you love and that love you. Remember that nothing else matters as long as you're not healthy. So this is like the most basic fundamental thing you can care for. Only then you can widen your horizon, form assimilations, and be truly present in the moment. Don't be afraid to confront beliefs, fears, people, thoughts and probabilities. We never know the outcome unless we try. Choose the right partner that is dedicated, intelligent, reflective, open-minded, kind, honest, and all in all a decent human being. I know those are some very defined criteria, but I believe that as long as you sort of have a vision for what you seek in a partner and some check marks, you will definitely make better decisions. Together, you conquer the world while growing into admirable parents, if that's what you want, of course. Remember to nurture your child the correct way, by always being a beacon of comfort, hope and strength, but at the same time challenge him or her in new experiences. A soul is a universe and our body its galaxy. Falling in love with faces only restricts us to the vastness of the soul and we miss out on the beauty of it. The vastness is so enriching that we never fall out of love once we fall for souls. And love can be anything. Love is as erratic and as fluid and volatile as the people who feel it. This doesn't mean that true love, the marriage of true minds, is any less real or any less beautiful. It's the opposite. Beauty belongs to what's impermanent, and we cherish the most the things we can lose. After all, our circle of influence is extremely small, and in the big picture probably neglectable. But if we can have an impact in our environment that changes the direction of lives in a positive way, that's simply beautiful and worth it. You will encounter hardships and struggles and depression, but without experiencing these ups and downs, you won't grow as a person, and it will be harder to appreciate the final result. Therefore, embrace everything life and your brain throws at you. Become anti-fragile. Find your Causa Sui project and leave the world a better place. Also, as a final word, don't hesitate to sometimes calm down. This world is pretty busy, and if you don't sit still for a moment, think about your situation, concentrate your thoughts on some topics, meditating and everything, then we pretty much wander around aimlessly, trying to figure out everything all at once. But multitasking is a myth. So take a step back, breathe in, and then take action again. It's really important to sometimes simply sit still, even if you think you have so much to do. Because in a world where everything is moving so fast, maybe the best contribution we can make is simply sitting still for a moment. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys on the next one.